And Andy, we're live. Greetings, everyone. It is Thursday, 9/21, and I'm excited to be able to share with you a very, very special guest. Matter of fact, Andy Schectman, founder, Miles Franklin, is going to be a weekly guest. He is going to provide a market report every Thursday at noon. Set your watch to it, because he's going to come on and he's going to make us a lot smarter about decentralized investing, how to be able to look at the market, understand the market, and we got to navigate the market. And man, Andy, thank you for agreeing to come on little old my show, because you are a legend. You're a legend, man.
You're too kind, brother. It's my honor. It's my pleasure. And, it's the secret to my success over the last 33 years is partnering with good people. And it became evident to me the first time I met you with Mike Adams that you are a quality. And it's my honor to be here. And I look forward to going down the rabbit hole with you every Thursday as we seem to be getting into crazier times by the day. And it'd be my privilege to be here and help look at things with you and see if we can make heads and tails of things. But thanks for having me. I really do.
You bet. And just to give people a little context, I want to take you to milesfranklin.com. And I invite you to go there and be able to kick the tires and just search around. What you will learn, though, from this show is for those of you who want to take your green dollars, your fiat that's melting every day, and get it into an asset that's going to not only hold its value, but increase in value, like the precious metals Andy provides, go to the website, okay? Look around, but at the point in time you want to make a purchase, what I encourage you to do, strongly encourage you to do, it would be a smart financial move, is go through Decentralized directory. It's the key partners supporting decentralization. And Andy is one of those, one of our key partners, who is a hero to me because he gets it. And what he has done is when you go in there and you click on learn more about Miles Franklin, it'll take you to a dedicated page where you'll be able to see everything about him. And then there'll be a way to contact his team. And if you go there and you contact, if you call in, you'll be able to speak with one of his members of his team that will give you white gloves treatment. But not only that, on your first order, on your very first order, so it doesn't matter how big it is, you're going to get 10% off of your first order. And that just doesn't happen. There just isn't that kind of margin in precious metals. So take advantage of that. Mike, thank you for making that available to my audience. I'm really grateful that you didn't have to do that, but I want to be able to give back. That's what decentralizeddirectory.com is, if we want to get out of the system, we have to stop being a slave to the system. And that means that we have to decentralize. We have to not rely on a petrodollar that is being inflated away. And I want you to talk about that. But moreover, we need to be able to get into assets that are going to hold value, where we can have self-custody, to where we don't have to trust someone else. So before we begin, I've been dying to have this conversation. I don't want it to be about the market right away. I want it to be about you. I want to learn about you, Andy. Can you please give us the history of how you arrived at founding Miles Franklin and becoming the world's renowned expert in precious metals? Please, the floor is yours, sir.
You're very kind, really are. And again, one other thing is that the website does list prices, but when you contact us, we have price sheets for orders above $10,000 where the prices become much more competitive, and maybe the most so in the industry. So keep that in mind as well.
Excellent.
Again, thank you for the kind introduction. Yeah, like my father and I, being perhaps two of the most unlikely cast of characters to have reached the levels that we have, really come from nothing. And we are, in essence, emblematic of the American dream. And I pinch myself very often. Look, my dad's middle name is Miles, and his best friend, who lent us $60,000 in 1989 to start the company, his middle name was Franklin.
Wow.
We started in a one-room office the size of a closet, and our original business focus was on Swiss investments. I spent 3 summers in Zurich, 1989, 90, and 91, learning from Swiss bankers and the way that not only they looked at investments, but the role that gold played in portfolios. And I learned very early that to these people, gold is not an investment. And I actually learned that lesson maybe even before I started there, started working with the Swiss, because when I started this company, I went to the University of Minnesota and I wanted to be a baseball player, but tore up my knee, didn't get to play for the Gophers, but started a company with my father. And, you know, at that point in my life, I was selling precious metals and working on Swiss investments was the furthest thing from my mind. And my dad said to me, look, we're going to do this, but if we do, there's one rule and only one rule, or I'll fire you. I'm like, all right, Dad, what's the deal? What's the rule? I can live with that. He says, you will buy something, some form of gold or silver every 2 weeks. And we get paid, period. And that's it. It's the only rule. I said, well, you know, heck, if that's the only rule, I can deal with it. Now, I've owned the company pretty much outright for the last 15 years. He's still around. He's my sounding board. He's my best friend. But I've honored my promise to him. Although I don't have to, I have. And for 33 years, I have never, not once, never missed a 2-week period where I did not pay myself first.
Unbelievable.
Greatest gift that he ever gave me was teaching me how to save and how to pay myself first, and how to realize that the only way you ever break free from the matrix, get off the wheel, get out of the rat race, is to pay yourself first and let the laws of compounding work for you instead of against you. So going back to what I was saying about the Swiss, who look at gold and silver as wealth, not as an investment, there's never been a truer statement in my mind. To me, gold and silver are not an investment. They are plain and simply wealth. And to your point earlier in the discussion about decentralization, there are very few assets, especially commodities on the planet, that represent wealth while simultaneously not being someone else's liability. There is no counterparty risk when you talk about owning precious metals. So, you know, to me, as we go through this process, I can tell you that I look at gold and silver as my wealth and not as an investment. Now, they may perform like one.
Oh, good.
But you can go back through all of history and look at the way nobility has owned gold and silver, and it's gone through 2 world wars, it's gone through German hyperinflation, it's gone through the Great Depression and every pandemic and everything that was ever thrown at it. And it is still wealth, so much so, Todd, that over the last 18 months, the most powerful, influential people in the world, the central banks, have bought more gold over the last 18 months than in the history of central banking. Wow. And when you go back to April of 2019, you see the Bank of International Settlements reclassifying gold as the world's only other tier 1 reserve asset. So when I say to you that, to me, gold is wealth and not an investment, I truly do mean that on every level, whether it be from my roots as a 19-year-old kid who was upset that his future had been derailed and now I had to sell gold, into something that I have embraced and truly believe it was the best gift that was ever presented to me, ever given to me, an opportunity not only to build a career from nothing, from scratch, as a very unlikely cast of characters to have succeeded, but to understand what wealth is, what wealth accumulation is, and the importance of having an asset that is not simultaneously someone else's liability. And as I've gone down this pathway leading us to where we are today, I think that statement much to the way that you look at things in terms of decentralization, has never been more important.
That's right.
And so I think as we talk about physical precious metals in relation to cryptocurrencies and the whole concept of decentralization, they are very much, I believe, kindred spirits. And this is not a thing of where it's one or the other or mutually exclusive opportunities. It is that they are both very important and are cut from the same cloth, so to speak, at least in terms of ideology. So
yeah,
I look at precious metals to me as a way out of the matrix. And I think there is a lot to be said in terms of symbiotic relationship between the new form of decentralization and the old form of decentralization, and putting the two together and looking them as a union that only makes your portfolio stronger, to me is something very intriguing and something I look forward to discussing with you each week as we go through this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And also you, prior to coming on the show, you said, Todd, after we're done, please send me the link because I want to send it to my subscriber base. And I'm really grateful for that. So I imagine there will be many new people who are watching. And just for a couple of minutes, I'd like to be able to introduce myself to those. My name is Todd Pitner. I am co-host with Mike Adams on Decentralized.tv, and I'm founder of decentralizeddirectory.com. And I'm just going to take you there. I want to take you through just the site, and then I want to have a little more in-depth conversation with you about decentralization. But so my website, look, I encourage you to take control of your future, period. And I say to exit the systems of centralized control, you need strategic guidance on how to privately keep more of what you earn, protect your purchasing power, shield assets from tax exposure, and 4, protect your children's inheritance and tax liabilities. Encourage you to go there. There's a little web. Yeah, you know what? Why not? Let's just play this if you don't mind.
You know, Todd, I'm not sure if you realize that we can't hear anything here.
Oh, you can't hear it?
No.
You cannot hear it. You know what? Here's something that smart people do. They actually say share sound. Thank you. I'm sorry. Let's start that one more time. Is that better? In a world where the traditional financial system is teetering on the edge of collapse, where inflation is devaluing our purchasing power daily, the need to proactively decentralize is mission critical to our personal freedom. The question is, who can you trust to guide you through the confusing maze of options? Imagine a landscape with countless products and services, obscured by perplexing terminology and daunting tech. Worse, scam ventures and snake oil salesmen lurk in the shadows, ready to mislead the naive. Enter Decentralized Directory. Greetings. My name is Todd Pitner, co-host of Decentralized.tv with Mike Adams and founder of Decentralizeddirectory.com. You know, intent on escaping the financial, energy, food, tax, and surveillance systems, I've uncovered decentralized solutions. I navigated the chaos so that you do not have to. Please subscribe to my monthly newsletter below and gain access to my ever-growing decentralized directory of key partners dedicated to decentralized freedom. Now, when you do subscribe, you'll receive a special bonus guide that will unlock the world of cryptocurrency for you. For those of you wanting special one-on-one instruction in successfully acquiring private crypto, precious metals at a discount, and access to a powerful, rarely publicized tax-saving strategy that the elites use, you'll want to book an hour with me. Moreover, if you hold crypto and wish to explore proven ways to off-ramp to fiat with potentially meaningful tax benefits, you'll want to book an hour with me. Promise. Okay, ready to embark on your transformative journey? Please explore below. And remember, friends, to escape the controllers, we must get and stay decentralized. Cheers. All right. So you can continue through the site. Please do subscribe to the newsletter. We just finished the bonus guide that'll unlock the world of cryptocurrency for you, and it's awesome. But yeah, you can go through and just explore it, and you can book an hour with me if you wish. There is going to be, if you're viewing this, give me to the middle of next week, and we're going to have our key partners supporting decentralization, which is where Miles Kimball will be prominently featured there. But we're so close to where the website will completely be done. But that's a little bit about me. I am, along with Mike Adams with decentralized.tv, we preach a few things. One is you have to get out of the current financial system as you know it. And Andy's going to educate us all a little bit as to what is happening with your purchasing power on a weekly basis, and where is it likely to go. But so we preach that you have to, there are a few things that you need to do. Get your money out of fiat, get it into precious metals first. You need to get it into private crypto. I can help you with that. And what I'm doing, and I am the tip of the spear here, there's nothing that I can, when I consult folks, nothing that I suggest to you that I have not done. I am installing a food forest at my home as we speak this week, and it's awesome. Next week, Andy, I'll take a short video and kind of show you the before and after. But I took my fiat and I invested it into this food forest that is going to provide for me and my progeny forever. I mean, as long as it stays in the family. It's really astonishing. Another thing is I'm getting into solar. It was a no-brainer once I did the math. I need to get off the energy grid because, man, I don't know about you. I know we both live here in Florida, but my energy bill went up over the last 2 months to just stupid levels. And I'm like, I'm done. So as I uncover decentralized solutions that can get me out of the system, I will share them with you through my directory, Decentralized directory. If there is a partner who is in there, I guarantee you they have been vetted by me. I've used them. Okay, with that, Mike, or not Mike, I'm so used to Mike Adams. Andy, okay, the floor is yours. This is the weekly market update. And I just invite you to be able to share with us, what's new. Why should we hate central bankers even more this week, Andy?
Well, one of the things that has shocked me, Todd, more than anything is the acceleration of events, which, I've been commenting on world market events on YouTube now for almost 4 years. I've done 1,200 videos that have somehow morphed into thousands and thousands and thousands. Other YouTubers take snippets of the videos that I make, awesome, and they try to monetize them, which I find to be flattering. That's okay. But I started on something called a linear progression of events that I noticed things that were happening on a macro scale that centered around de-dollarization and a growing union of countries that would be the BRICS, and all the things that came with. And I started doing this in 2019, long before anyone else was talking about it. And it became very, very evident to me. And in doing the interviews in 2019 and 2020, we would see 1 to 2 to 3 things, maybe a month, that were worth commenting on, that were changing. Now it's 1 to 2 to 3 things a day. And I think it's very important to understand that things are accelerating, and they are getting to a point where we are going to start to see some real changes. So let's
looks like
let's talk about some of the
there
things that have happened here just recently, and I'll tie them into some of the most important things that I focus on related to the things I've talked about over the last 4 years. Well, you mentioned energy, getting off the grid. Well, I think that's a good place to start. You know, when we talk about commodities, Todd, energy is certainly one of the most important commodities in the world, because every single activity that we do, from heating your home to manufacturing, to mining, to farming, surfing the internet, driving your car, I don't care what it is, they all require some form of energy. And when we talk about inflation, that means that cheap energy is critical to keeping inflation in check. And since energy is the major factor in nearly everything we do, higher energy prices will mean higher inflation. And if energy remains expensive, that means higher inflation is here to stay. And when you look at what's going on with energy, on top of the fact that the BRICS nations just admitted, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, and Saudi Arabia, on top of Russia, you have nearly 80% of the oil production globally now under the control of the BRICS. And we see oil prices that have just crossed $91 a barrel for the first time in over a year. And look, oil prices are up 40% from their lows this summer. And they're up 20% since Biden said we were going to delay refilling the reserves that he pillaged to get the price down 40% due to market conditions. We have gas prices up 11%, Todd, over the last month, and up a crazy 50% since 2020. And I ask you, will Biden be the first president to go down in history to completely drain the strategic petroleum reserve? I think it's important to understand that, let's just make a blanket statement. As the oil supply tightens, and that's exactly what we see coming out of the BRICS, coming out of OPEC, oil prices and inflation rates rise together, and along with bond yields and interest rates. And so it's a perfect storm for the overinflated bond market, the stock market, and the real estate market, because as rates rise along with the price of oil, it will negatively impact all of these assets that are inversely correlated to a rise in rates. And I think a lot of people forget that oil fell almost 50% from its peak, and that was because of Biden pillaging the strategic stockpile of oil. And it brought inflation down from 9% to 3%. But, the reserves in that strategic stockpile are at a 40-year low right now. And, there's only the U.S. economy can only run for 20 days on what is left. And the point I'm making is that there's not much room left to be able to continue to sell the strategic stockpile reserves to bring the price of oil down any lower. And we are now just starting to see that in the CPI numbers, which last week came in at 7%, right? And that 7% is a bunch of malarkey.
Yeah, it is.
If you go and listen to John Williams of shadowstats.com, he'll tell us that inflation is actually closer to 12, 13, 14%, because the changes they've made in the measurements of inflation, which strip out the cost of energy, the cost of housing, the cost of food, these things that are all inflating, are now no longer measured in the CPI. And so, look, in a nutshell, I guess, energy prices have gone up, interest rates have gone up, and all of this is going to bleed into higher consumer prices. I don't think the market gets this yet. And I think inflation is indeed here to stay. And what makes it very, very, and by the way, if you want to stop me at any point and ask for clarification or questions, please do. Have a bad habit of
no problem. I will insert myself here. I'll say, when you think about that, that's all very, very scary. But Andy, the good news is, we all know this who are working out there, our incomes are rising at the same rate, right?
No, they're not. And that's a problem. On top of our incomes not rising at the same rate, which Of course, rising incomes because of inflation put strain on the companies who have to pay more, which means they have to charge more.
Yes.
Again, it's a self-reinforcing loop. It starts to feed upon itself. And because those increases in cost components need to be passed on to the end user. And on top of all of this, what do our finances look like? Well, we just hit a record 17.1 trillion in household debt, 12 trillion record in mortgages, 1.6 trillion record debt in auto loans, a record 1.6 trillion in student loans. Let me stop right there for a moment.
Okay.
You know, the US government came out with their 2022 balance sheet recently, and it showed $155 trillion in debt, 32 trillion on balance sheet, which just actually crossed over to 33, on top of Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and government military pensions, amongst other things that put our total debt at over $155 trillion. This is by the government's own admission. And the largest asset of the US government, you know what it is?
Student debt.
There you go. $1.6 trillion represents about 43% of the asset base of the land of the free, the home of the brave, the world reserve currency. How pathetic is that we call the indebtedness of our children the largest asset of this country?
Hey, Andy, let me ask you, if you could rewind time and do a mulligan right now, we haven't talked. I don't know about your children and such, but I have 4 daughters. You know, I wonder. Well, let me qualify this. I try to be a good steward and a good parent, and I paid for my daughter's education, so they didn't go into debt. But I know so many families who weren't as fortunate, and their kids did have to assume this debt. At this point in time, today, at the high rates to be able to get an education, should kids seriously consider something else? Maybe not.
I talk about it all the time with my wife. My son graduated from the Ross School of Business, University of Michigan, one of the top 2 or 3 business schools in the world. And at $70,000 a year, it's enough to make you want to throw up. And I said to my wife, I said, wouldn't it have been better to give Josh $280,000 to go start a Jimmy John franchise? And in the 4 years that he graduated college, he would have already had more life experiences and built equity in a business than he would have ever found in going to school. And more importantly, it's very discriminatory to where you have to have the wherewithal to be able to pay that. My daughter is in the University of Wisconsin, and that's about all in $55,000 a year. And again, you know, these are prestigious schools that supposedly give you a head start on on life. I never graduated college, and I'm running a business that has just exceeded $9 billion in gross sales over 33 years.
That's crazy.
I would simply say to you this, that it has to change. When the head football coach at the University of Michigan is making over $10 million a year and tuition runs you with room and board close to $70,000, there is a problem. And the problem is that we are making it quite prohibitive for kids to go to school. If I would have been able to win this battle, what I would have said is that my kids should have spent 2 years at a junior college to prove their merit, and to, you know, something costs $2-3 grand a year to go to a junior college and show me that you're worth investing the money into a higher degree. What I mean by that is you could spend $5,000, $7,000 on 2 years worth of college at a junior college, get really good grades, and there isn't a school in the nation that wouldn't want you. And
that's a great point.
In that case, you might even get scholarship money. But to go to a school as a 17 or 18-year-old kid and pay that kind of money, it's a crime as far as I'm concerned. And
so what is it, Andy, that keeps us from that line, that path? Is it our egos? Is it our egos as parents? Is it our, is it the pressure on the kids to, JUCO?
It's recency bias. It's normalcy bias. And there was a time when a college degree meant everything. I mean, look, the truth of it is, you can do online with the Phoenix.com, I think it's called.
Yeah.
You know, and you could find more information online if you really want to educate yourself than you can in a college textbook. So it will change. I think it has to change.
Yeah.
But on top of all of this indebtedness, we have a first time ever $1 trillion in credit card debt. The average monthly payment right now for a home is going to just hit $3,000 a month for the first time in history. And this is all as oil prices are up 40% in 3 months.
Wow.
Mortgage rates at 7.5%. Credit card rates are at a record 25%. And so when you look at the national debt, when you talk about pathetic, our national debt, Todd, has spiked by $1.6 trillion since the debt ceiling was lifted. And $2.16 trillion from a year ago. It took 109 years to get the first 1.6 trillion. We just did it in a few months. And here we are just breaching 33 trillion. According to the Treasury Department, just a couple of days ago, the numbers are going up at a pace that is extraordinary. And there will be ramifications.
There has to be. There has to be. I mean, in that hamster wheel, once you get on it, and we already discussed incomes aren't rising. As a matter of fact, your kids, when they graduate, my kids, when they graduate, you know, they go out there and I'm telling you, I was very underwhelmed at the quality of the job offers, right? There's so much competition out there of other people who have overpaid for their educations. I'm just like, man, should have gotten a trade, you know.
100%, 100%. And the world is changing. And I don't know how many people understand that. You know, I ask people, Todd, I mean, to me, the biggest thing that I have focused on for 4 years is the dollar. And I ask people all the time, what makes the dollar the world reserve currency? And more often than not, people don't know. They have no clue. And before I tell you what makes the dollar the world reserve currency, I'll preface it by saying there are two economic advisors, two very prominent economic advisors to the United States government. The lead economic advisor, number one, is a man named Jared Bernstein. And Jared Bernstein's thesis is to relinquish the dollar's world reserve status, calling it a privilege we can no longer afford. He's written reports, those that were picked up by the New York Times and the Washington Post, the most infamous being Dethrone King Dollar. He made comments in dealing with the Biden administration, the Trump administration, and the pushback that they were getting by imposing tariffs on China, and said, good, if this helps relinquish the dollar's world reserve status, that would be great. Now, keep that in mind as I ask the question again, what makes the dollar the world reserve currency? And, you know, I've yet to find someone who usually, well, very rarely anyway, who will get it right away. But to me, there are three things that make the dollar the world reserve. The first is the fact that it is called the petrodollar. And in 1974, we struck a deal with the Saudi kingdom. And we said, we're going to protect you. But for that privilege, you will denominate dollars globally, or denominate oil globally in dollars through OPEC. And the money that you get for selling the oil, you'll recycle it back into our treasuries. And for that, we will protect you in the Saudi kingdom, and no one will ever mess with you again. Great. It's been that way for 50 years. And it's created a synthetic demand for the US dollar. Right. So let's examine that for just one moment. The day we left Afghanistan in 2021 was, you don't have to be ex-military or even a patriot to realize it was done in a poor fashion, with over 3,000 American citizens left behind enemy lines, with freedom fighters who risked their lives left behind enemy lines, and people hanging from the wings of a transport plane. It was an embarrassment. Wow. There is no coincidence to the timing of the announcement the day after Saudi Arabia signed a joint military cooperation agreement with Russia. The day after that, Nigeria did. And so when you talk about what made the dollar the world reserve currency, at least point number one is the petrodollar and our protection of the Saudi kingdom. Well, now they're being protected by other people. And in the span of a few years since then, Saudi Arabia, which is on the Belt Road Initiative, along with every other OPEC country, which is the largest infrastructure project in human history, which currently comprises 75% of human population, 50% of global GDP. Over 150 countries have signed on to the Belt Road. It is linking Asia, Africa, South America, parts of Europe through roads and maritime channels and bridges and railways. The roads and the bridges and the maritime channels and the railways will only be patrolled by military and commerce. It is it's the Panama Canal on steroids.
Wow.
So you put the BRICS nations, or excuse me, the Belt Road nation, you have all of the OPEC countries, including Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has also been formally admitted into the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India,
Right.
China, South Africa. Saudi Arabia has applied to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the largest regional financial and military organization on the planet. Saudi Arabia has applied and joined the BRICS New Development Bank and has told folks in Davos that they are open to taking other currencies for oil. The beginning of the end of the petrodollar is here upon us.
Hey, Andy,
pardon me?
One question.
Yes.
Why would they have done an about face after being protected by the US for 50 years? Aren't they loyal to us? What happened to their loyalty?
Because we signed one of his first acts in office was to sign an executive order saying that by 2030, we would be 50% green, and by 2050, 80% green. So we are going into a period of time where we are moving away from fossil fuels. But not only that, we talk about $155 trillion in debt with $5 trillion in assets, where our manufacturing base has been sent offshore. There is only one way to pay for this ever increasing debt, and it is either by default or inflation. They will choose what all politicians do, inflation over austerity, and they've done that going all the way back to the beginning of time. So not only are we inflating our currency to pay for our ever increasing monetary brain dead policy, but look at what the Treasury market has done over the last year. All of the bonds that they have been recycling their dollars into have been decimated. So we are raising rates, decimating the bond market. We are inflating away our debt, and we have chosen to go green. Now, if you look at the countries that are in the BRICS, the Belt Road, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Union, they're all the same countries. It comprises 80% of human population, and they are not going green. So that's one end of it. We're losing the world reserve status because we weaponized the dollar. We kicked Russia out of SWIFT. We didn't just sanction them. We confiscated their F4X reserves, and we've used them to rebuild the Ukraine. And at the same time, we tell Saudi Arabia, the linchpin of the dollar hegemony, hey, we're going green. So from Jared Bernstein's standpoint, wanting to shed the world reserve status, the first two things you would do would be to weaponize the dollar and make everyone say, shit, are we next? Are they going to come after us next? And number two, you tell Saudi Arabia, hey, thanks for the memories, guys. It's been awesome. But that's just one half of it, or one third of it. The other part would be the full faith and credit of the US government. Well, let's look at the credit part. We already said 155 trillion in debt by their own admission. 5 trillion in assets by their own admission. The largest asset, over 40%, 1.6 trillion being student debt. We are insolvent, we are broke, and we are a banana republic by traditional measurements. We are 125% debt to GDP ratio, but we do not jail our political opponents the way that a banana republic in South America would, right? Well, at least not yet, if you know, you're paying attention. So full faith and credit. So the credit, check that off. The petrodollar, check that off. How about the faith? Where people will people sail on inner tubes tied with strings from Cuba, or walk, you know, thousands of miles from Central America to escape an authoritarian regime, to find liberty and justice, like when we used to say the Pledge of Allegiance, liberty and justice for all, to find a system that is very questionable in terms of how it is being applied. Is it being applied equally? Justice. Just look at the former administration and the current and ask yourself, this is not a political statement. I'm a libertarian. I think both Republican and Democrats are idiots. But I will tell you, this is about patriotism. This is a country that is embracing things like transgenderism, like cancel culture, like censorship. Look, I come from a family, my parents were hippies, and nothing surprised me growing up. I respected everyone, whatever your background was, whatever your beliefs were, whatever your social preferences were. That's fine. I can respect you and be cool with you, but we didn't have to celebrate them. And to have to be forced to celebrate these things that are ripping apart the fabric of this country.
That's right.
It's a problem to me. So when you look at the full faith and credit of this country, I think both of those topics are debatable. You could argue we're insolvent. You can argue that the faith, the justice, the liberty is something that has been questioned by our allies and foes. You can argue that what has made this country strong, the unity, go back to World War II and after the Great Depression, and these people believed in God, they respected authority, they respected the nuclear family, they worked very hard, they saved money. This is a different world all of a sudden we find ourselves in, where the divisiveness in this country, red, blue, black, white, rich, poor, vaccinated, no vaccinated, has ripped apart the unity of this country. Not only that, as I just mentioned, we are broke as we've ever been. We have the lowest level of savings we've ever had, and energy prices and inflation are going higher. And when you look at it from a broad perspective, we are not clinging to the privilege of being the world reserve currency. In fact, we are doing everything we can to shed it. We are pushing away the petrodollar status by saying we're going green, and we weaponize the dollar, losing our impartiality. Look at what's happening in Iraq as an example. And it's no, I want to read to you something real quick, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I want people to understand what it is that's pushing people away from the dollar. You know, we went into Iraq in 2003 and under the guise of weapons of mass destruction. We didn't find any. Oops, we're sorry. We destroyed your country and toppled your regime, and there are no consequences, right? So in fact, you know, the way the world is looking at us right now in terms of hypocrisy, when I read to you this little article here, just a few paragraphs, I think it will really help people understand why there is a rallying cry to push back against the West. So, you know, right now there are 14 Iraqi banks. By the way, Iraq just made it illegal to trade in dollars. If you are a business, you trade in dollars, you'll go to jail and lose your business. Shows how appreciative they are of our grand gesture. Well, there are 14 Iraqi banks that are sanctioned right now, 14 of them. And the reason they're sanctioned is that they were trying to buy natural gas from Iran. And well, that's a no-no according to the West. We say, no, you can't do that. So since 2003, they've invaded and occupied, and they would say illegally, Iraq. And we are sanctioning 14 of their banks for trying to buy natural gas from Iran in order to fuel their country. And in fact, they are in the middle of massive power blackouts in the middle of summer where it's 120 degrees. Let me just read to you something here.
Yeah.
Sanctions are the latest efforts by Washington to coercively intervene in Iraq's economy to the detriment of the country the U.S. Army illegally invaded and occupied in 2003. The intervention includes the efforts to block Iraqi payments for Iranian natural gas. Now, here's where it gets nuts, okay? Since 2003, all Iraqi oil revenues have been paid into an account with the U.S. Federal Reserve, allowing Washington to control the Iraqi economy further and pressure its government. Although Iraqis formed an allegedly sovereign government after the U.S. invasion, Iraq is still restricted from opening accounts for its oil revenues outside the United States. Iraqi's oil funds, which in 2022 amounted to more than $90 billion, remain in one single account at the New York Federal Reserve, the institution that 2 years ago unilaterally blocked Afghanistan from accessing its foreign reserves, plunging the nation into unparalleled crisis. So here we are. We've been there since 2003. For 20 damn years. We destroyed the country. And we are still taking all of the revenue from their oil reserves and holding it in a reserve account at the New York Fed. And if we don't like what they're doing, we keep it, we sanction it, we confiscate it, and we tell the banks, no, you can't do business with Iran, even if it means that you're going to fry to death in the middle of a blistering hot summer. We say no. And yet we can go around and impose these types of unilateral decisions, and the rest of the world says, well, wait a second, this isn't right. And that leads, look at Maduro in Venezuela, who just formally applied the BRICS. They're under sanctions.
Yeah.
And you know something? They hold the largest oil reserves in the world. Look at the countries that are joining. Every single one of them are very rich, very, very rich in oil reserves, or they are in very, very key places around the globe in terms of shipping routes and the way that goods and services are transported around the world. And we can talk about that too, but I'll stop and see if you have any questions at this point.
I mean, as you're rolling all of that off, and I'm thinking about the leadership that got us here, and you mentioned weapons of mass destruction, I'm thinking if you take that M off of mass, we're getting closer to what the leadership really is. Just they are the weapon of mass destruction. I mean, what is it? Do you think at bottom we literally have been taken over, that we're a communist state, because how can leadership take a great country like ours down the path they have if it's not controlled demolition from the inside?
It is controlled demolition. I mean, look at what Jared Bernstein wants to do. He wants to shed the world reserve currency.
Yeah.
The number two person, which we can get to the banks in a moment, the number two in charge, the second economic advisor, the two most prominent, is Lael Brainerd. Lael spent time at the Treasury. She was last at the Fed, number two at the Fed under Powell. She worked directly with MIT in developing the executive order for the new central bank digital currency, which the Bank of International Settlements said every country need to have an operational one by 2025. And she ran Point for FedNow, which came out a few weeks ago, which is the Fed's version of Venmo and Zelle, which will be implemented in all the nation's banks very, very soon. They are trying to, I believe, reset the system. And what makes me believe that this is the path they've chosen is you go back to Biden saying that inflation was Putin's fault. Now, if you've spent any time studying Austrian economics, at least for more than a day, you would understand that inflation 100% of the time, every time, is a monetary event. It is an increase in the money supply. We printed more money in the last 4 years than in the history of the United States preceding it. And
stop. Say that one more time slowly, because
in the last 4 years, the United States printed more money than in the history of the country preceding it, while at the same time suppressing interest rates to very, very well damn near zero. And so the cost of money was nothing, and it was raining down upon us, which created massive distortions in asset prices.
So if people are familiar with Al Gore's hockey stick on, global warming, this is a financial hockey stick of money printing. I mean, think about that. Just the last 4 years, what we've been living through has just been historical, hasn't it, Andy? I mean, these last 4 years is like, it's like the utter destruction. So I ask you this, what is the value of this anymore? I mean, it seems to me like it's kind of more like this, and then it's going to go like this. I mean, that's seriously where we're going to get to on this, to where these aren't going to buy a lot of anything. I'm installing the food forest, and I was just feeling really good last weekend, just knowing that it was all happening. And I decided I wanted to go to the grocery store, and I wanted to get a couple of nice, big old fat steaks, the old 1.5-inch ones that we used to buy for like maybe $8. That used to be able to get an 1.5-inch ribeye for $8, and that was a really good one. They are now $25 for a thinner one. And I was like, I mean, could I afford it? Yes, but I had to just refuse. I'm like, no way. I'm not doing it. This is just ridiculous. I'm not paying.
And that is inflation.
Yeah, that's inflation. So
it had nothing to do with Putin. It had everything to do with increasing the cost of, or increasing the money supply dramatically. while suppressing interest rates. These are massive distortions.
Yeah.
And when they blamed that on on Putin, I said, my God, they're looking for a villain. So now take a step back.
There you
What did
go.
Jared Bernstein say? Got to get rid of the world reserve currency. You weaponize the dollar, you push Saudi Arabia away, and what do you have? Lo and behold, you have a villain, Xi Jinping and Putin and OPEC, those bastards, they ruined the American way of life. Because what people don't understand is, it's as simple as this, Todd, and that is that if every country on the planet has had to own oil or dollars to buy oil for 50 years, and the United States goes around through coercion to get people to do their or to follow their way. When China has brokered peace deals between Iran and Saudi Arabia, Sunni and Shiite, they've hated each other forever. They've brokered peace deals between Iran and Iraq, building the first ever railway. Modi from India, the president of India, and Xi Jinping met on the sidelines at the BRICS meeting and have instructed the people in charge of the border. They call it the I believe the line of control, which is the Kashmir region, to fix it and to
Wow.
resolve their differences. So you see, they're going in and they're building railways and bridges and oil refineries and maritime channels and roads, and they're doing things mutually cooperative, and they're building peace deals, brokering peace deals, because never has it been more true. My enemy's enemy is my friend. You have this growing alliance of people that are doing things mutually beneficially when we go in and we coerce. So all it will take would be all of these countries. Now, again, remember the BRICS, the Belt Road Initiative, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Eurasian Economic Union. I have mentioned all those groups together forever because they're all combined. In fact, so much so that the president of Belarus is putting together a summit between the BRICS 11, the 5 and the new 6, along with the delegates from the Eurasian Economic Union and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, in an effort to meld them all together. They will. And so too will those on the Belt Road. You're talking the majority of human population.
Right.
So all it will take is for Saudi Arabia and OPEC to say, hey, look, you guys are going green. You've signed an executive order saying so. You're following that agenda. Not to mention, you're inflating the crap out of your currency. The bond market has become very unstable. Look, we respect you and we thank you for protecting us for the last 5 decades. But we're now going to take oil payments in other currencies. And bang, when that happens, everything collapses. If every dollar on the planet that has had to have been accumulated to buy oil all of a sudden gets dumped and heads home towards the issuer, us, that tsunami of inflation you see coming across both oceans, Atlantic and Pacific, will overwhelm the United States with inflation. And what happens as a byproduct of hyperinflation is spiking of interest rates, because you have to compensate for the loss of purchasing power of the currency in order to make it worthwhile. You can't have 20% of inflation and 5% interest rates. Your currency becomes worthless. So interest rates spike, not controlled by the Federal Reserve, as we all believe it should be. No, it's controlled by the market. That's how it should be.
So let me ask you, Andy, and I cannot believe it. I looked up and I'm like, we've already gone our hour. And I'm like, this went by so fast. I'm going to love these Thursday sessions with you. But so that's to be continued. But I want to kind of anchor this by saying that when that happens, when that hyperinflation happens, it's certainly going to be, it's good for all of us to be in superior money. And superior money over the centuries, for 5,000 years has been what, Andy Schectman?
It's been gold and silver. And what are the central banks buying at record pace? What is the only other tier 1 asset in the world? What it's bad for is traditional assets, stocks, bonds, real estate. If everyone dumps dollars and stocks, bonds, and real estate, which have been elevated to stratospheric levels because of easy money and low interest rates, and this happens, there's your Klaus Schwab moment where everything resets. In fact, 300 years ago, Thomas Jefferson said, if we allow a central bank to own the money supply, to control the money supply, first by inflation, then by deflation, we will end up renting back the land that our forefathers conquered. Well, that's just like what Klaus Schwab said, because we've had the inflation. that we've had over the last 4 years blew up asset prices. Here comes the deflation, where you see interest rates jack up and the economy grind to a halt and people get laid off. And well, a 4% mortgage on a $500,000 home sounds great until you lose your job. And then all of a sudden, by deflation, default, we end up renting. It sounds just like what Klaus Schwab said 300 years ago.
And those rental prices are being jacked up too.
Yes. Most of it is owned by BlackRock and Blackstone. You're right.
Yes, on purpose with intent over the last 4 years. They've been going, and when people this last summer here in Florida were like, wow, I put my house on the market and I got a cash offer and it was $10,000 over or $20,000 over. That was BlackRock doing it on purpose so that they could take over control of complete neighborhoods, so that when all of this hits the fan, what's going to happen?
You'll be happy and you'll rent.
No, you will own nothing, and you won't even be able to afford to be a renter, because that's when BlackRock's going to jack those prices. But what they'll do is say, you know what? There's this 15-minute city over there where we have some nice cubby holes for you. This is where it's going. So, Andy Schectman, please, would you provide the phone number that people could call to get to your team? And when they do, if they say Todd sent me, they can take advantage of that 10% off their first order. Can you give us that number?
The phone number will be 952. Now everyone has a cell phone these days where toll free is no longer needed. 952-929-7006, 952-929-7006, or info@milesfranklin.com. Todd sent me in the subject line. Ask questions, ask for a price list, ask questions about precious metals IRAs or about anything you'd like. All of our brokers are seasoned. They've all, not only that, they're all my personal friends that most go back to elementary school. Some of them have spent years on Wall Street. Others have degrees from Wharton, master's degree in business from Temple. We are not your ordinary precious metals company. We are a hybrid between full service in terms of being able to do things for you if you just want to place an order. But if you want to have a discussion, a real one, on what's happening with the economy or the geopolitical landscape or any of the things we're discussing here, all of our brokers are more than qualified to pick up where this left off. And I know there's so much more to talk about.
Yes.
We'll put a thumbtack in this and come back and pick up where we left off next week.
We will next week, Andy. And everybody, this is the impact I want to have with decentralizeddirectory.com. And that is to be able to find just amazing leaders like Andy Schectman and milesfranklin.com, 952-929-7006, info@milesfranklin.com. And I encourage you to please reach out, because nowhere else are you going to be able to get white glove treatment. And man, I'm telling you, 10% off the initial order. And when you talk to one of your team, people who are really seriously thinking about, man, I have saved and saved and saved green dollars all my life. You just heard what's going to happen. That is your future. Not from Todd Radamas, no, Andy Radamas. and so please, I encourage you to decentralize your finances. Get into precious metals, gold, silver, Miles Franklin, and take self-custody so that it's yours. So with that,
I couldn't agree more, Todd. And I look forward to going through this with you over the next several months. I think this is going to become a very compelling story, and I'm honored to be here and go through this with you. And I'll look forward each week to picking up where we left off and continuing to follow this narrative that seems to be accelerating at a very, very fast rate. And
and what I'm grateful for is I know that throughout the week it's almost like a fire hose of information, financial information that's out there, and I am grateful that you're keeping up on it. And people who want an update, now that we're through the intro video, our inaugural video, those who are looking for that update, Andy is going to bring it every week. He's going to bring us current events. He's going to keep us posted. And so we just hope you come back please smash that like button, subscribe, maybe share with some friends that we exist here, okay? And it's just going to get larger and larger and larger and more meaningful. Andy Schectman, you are a rock star. Thank you. This was awesome.
Great to be here, brother.
Amazing.
Look forward